still.
We could just say all the team leads.
But you know, it's winter.
Have to show about this one.
It's winter.
Or else,
Like there's a team lead training.
or else we disband their project. No.
You could do it like in fall quarter where they have to do it, especially if they're new.
Well, I mean, team leads are an interview
But it's hard
process,
because,
you
like,
know.
not everyone, yes, scheduling.
Oh boy. Sorry. Wait, scheduling for what?
Sorry for the
brought up
off-topic
being able to
conversation. We are
having
being
teammates have to
hooligans.
like,
Scheduling stuff?
Okay, guys.
Yeah, but
They should. They
But-
really should.
Guys.
It should be like
Team
team
leads
lead
are
or the
essentially
producer
producers.
comes to the
Hello, are you
workshop.
joining our workshop?
Sure.
Fuck yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we shall begin.
Oh, gosh.
Take
Alright,
it
sorry
away.
for swearing, by the way. My name is Henry, by the way, Stream, for production officer for stuff like that. So, and this is for design doc.
Why are you so far? You sit over here.
You don't spot originally.
so Mike, so that
Yeah.
they're picking things
I-
up.
Oh yeah, but I don't want it in front of the TV.
It'll be fine. Wait. Yeah, that's true. Okay. For the design doc, what makes it so important? Yeah. What is a game design document, kind of thing? Do you guys want to answer the thing first, so you're
Game
understanding?
design document is like the software requirement document for when you're writing, like when you are doing software design. It is a document that outlines all your concept and the mechanics and what you're gonna do, what the programmers and all the other people are gonna do.
Yeah. That was exactly very accurate way of saying that. Yes.
Okay.
Almost like it is, yes, the written description, but for this is kind of like the cipher. It's more so, yeah, the software requirements like document to show all the use cases and everything and what we are planning out for this idea. But for games specifically, you know, a game design document is a written description for all of such a game things and giving the development team an overall concept of what the objective of the game is trying to do. The GDD should cover anything and everything needed to create the game you and your team envision. You should try to make that very clear and concise and everything to make sure you're kind of all the overall like conceptual pillars of the game is all established between everyone. And if people get confused, they can use this other form of medium to help like reestablish that in their heads what they're supposed to do. Normally, GDDs uses visual references to aim how the game should look and feel and play as well. Referencing all the other game art and audio will all like have a good idea to paint the image of the game. It's like a minimum viable product to have the premise of your game being established. Why is it important? Like everything, creating a GDD will allow your teammates to have references, and when they're confused, it allows everyone to clarify everything. And for making a GDD, I would also recommend using Google Doc. Having outlines, having overall things that you think that are just general things that seem common knowledge for game design documents or requirement documents in general. You think you can do all these assumptions on your audience? In reality, you can't. You shouldn't. Like, there are some common assumptions that you can make, but it should be like an official GDD usually will try to make everything like streamlined and established for all the controls and everything, especially like knowing what your audience is, knowing actually I will go into that one later. Let's kind of continue. You should be continuously updated as you and your team move along the production phases of the game. You shouldn't be just having the GDD as the first thing at the start point and then it never changes throughout. Your GDD is going to be changing throughout the entire quarter. It's all about like fleshing that out and making sure all of these ideas are documented in some way and like clear by the end of it. So in case if team members leave because they have future obligations or they feel kind of burnt out of the game and a new person comes in, if they look at the GDD, they are completely understanding of what the game project is. That's why GDD is very important for any quarter, every projects that last more than a quarter, because it's very huge on that. What's it look like? Here are some examples of NAS's previous documents and one of my own. They're great references how you can have different styles in a GDD. So at Corgi at Night, I remember from NAS's, you have overall like the intro of the game and overall concept, but you have this right here, the outline. That's why I like Google Docs so much, is because you have this huge outline that you can like go back to and navigate, because all of this is like 11 pages long. It's a really big design document. and it has a lot of images, a lot of pictures for all stuff. But from an outsider's perspective looking in, it is very hard to like legibly like understand all of it without an extra explanation. But it's good for the team, for herself to kind of get like a checklist. This is kind of I guess her idea of replacement for Trello. I don't know if she used Trello a lot, but what she did, at least for her design document, I remember from talking with her, she would cross out some of the like stuff in that GDD to help her keep on track and stuff. It is a tool for a producer to help, like, you know, it's to help you and your team kind of understand stuff as well. But yeah, using a lot of art references and other stuff as well. Here's a one for a game jam, which was another good example. This was more like a more recent, game design document. And it kind of talks about more like UI design and stuff like that, overall audience and overall other things like that, and having like sketches and mock-ups of what it would look like. This is like using other references of games, so not just so for the programmers, but the artists can know what the overall look of the game was in their heads, so everyone has that idea of what was in their game in their
There were two
is visualized.
images from Dream Daddy.
Mm-hmm. Dream Daddy is a very good game.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm. I do love it a lot. UI artwork, expressions, stuff like that. All this stuff is very important for kind of like helping out fleshing out this game. You know, each of them are different depending on your genre. Like Corgi at Night was a platformer game, but Lifeline was a different concept, which was a visual novel at cross with I think it was a crime game. I think it was more like a stress, like you had a stress meter, like you do it calling with the operator, and if you stressed them out too much, they would end the call or something. But if you didn't, there were sketches for it. Like I said, here look at right here with a game design document. You have the UI right here with the stress meter for 2 people and the text box and the dialogue timer for actions. Having that very early on help with the overall direction of the game and having like visualization of all what was going to be. So you had like things like a stress meter and things like different colors that indicate productive people. This UI stuff is very like the minimum viable mock-up. You know how in production or informatics there's like mock-ups that you can make that are very quick to focus on user experience and user design. It's very important in that aspect to make those mock-ups early on, not just for your player but also for your team, so they know what they're trying to have envision of the concept. Because you can have this huge concept for an idea, but if you don't have a quick thing to show them, like a resulting like mock-up for that, some people will be like, how does this work? And you have to explain that very in depth with words, which is honestly, words are very hard, can be misinterpreted very incorrectly, to be honest. So having those images will help a lot with that in your GDD. And then here is here's the GDD that I'm making that's still in the progress for Platform May Season 2 kind of thing. I have, for certain things, for organization-wise, I have more a reference to old GDDs, a Trello, playtestable prototype kind of thing that we had from our last game jam. I also have the idea organization of design pillars, vision statements. Taking inspiration from already established game design documents is always good for having reference, but I also have my own certain things I put in here, like getting inspiration from Naz's, from online and my own, kind of mix it all together. There's some like design work tables, like design questions that we ask that are pre-production concepts that could work. And then later on, we're kind of doing mechanics and scope breakdown. We're trying to cement the ideas for platforming and visual novel, and using like, images, like I said, to help with like the idea of how that would work. Like like things that were in my head for that were like, saving and loading and all the other things like that. It helps a lot with just production-wise to have everyone look at all these ideas.
Okay, I have to say this big question. The reason I'm really interested in this topic is that I'm always afraid of taking away designer's job in writing GDD. Because the GDD is supposed to be something that designers write?
It's not their sole purpose. The designers, they are usually the one who comes up with things like power-ups or things like platform design or like level design or gameplay design. Writing the GDD is more of like a visionary thing, like what you, the aesthetics and like stuff like that. Go ahead.
May I interject? I do agree that the designer's job to do a GDD and encourage the designer to help make it. But sometimes design, like a lot of us design, at least as a person who is a little bit of a designer myself, I know that my ideas in my brain sometimes get garbled out without someone to help me like contextualize it. Having as a producer kind of like visualize that with them is like make sure from your design idea that you're writing out like that. We have a lot of images on the Discord that I'm going to be transcribing. Like you are helping transcribing that stuff and stuff like that. But if your designer is not doing it, this GD is still important and stuff like that. If they're not finishing it, you can tell them to work on it and finish that up. But it's like a mix. I definitely think it's like if the designer is going to do that, by all means, that's great. Make sure to tell them though that like I'll continue. May I continue on and I'll like talk about it more on that, and see if that answers your question.
Sure.
But yeah, so it would be the basic setup and categories. No two like I said, no two GDD game design documents are going to look the same. With that being said, however, there are some logistics you should have to cover in a document, regardless of what the game project is. Your document should include art assets, programmable scripts, audio ideas, dialogue, plot concepts, UI ideas as well. And the level of detail may vary, but your rule of thumb is more detailed you are about what you want in the game, the better your team will understand the concept of the game. The most important thing to know about GDD is to make sure it's legible and organized. Because a designer can have all these ideas, but if he doesn't organize it properly, for the rest of everyone else, like it's going to be hard for them to organize it. A GDD is not just for the designer, it's for everyone in the team. So as a producer, you can help organize that for them better and do that and say like, I think it'd be better if you can, like these ideas are all good, but it's hard for me to, like from an outside perspective looking in, maybe it'd be hard for them to read all of this. So that's why a GDD has to be used, I feel like.
Are you saying that the producer should actively take a role in terms of managing because designer usually can't manage for, like the ideas for themselves?
It's a collaborative.
It's a collaborative effort. You don't make it. I don't want to make it feel like the designer is not capable,
Yeah.
but by all means, let them know like, hey, I think this is a good way. Can we organize? Is it okay if I can organize it for a bit to make it look a little bit more legible? It's because it's like you know what I mean, like an idea of a mess. Like a designer will have all these ideas spitballing into the thing. But
the
if
producer makes it more digestible.
make it yes. Thank you very much, Kiara. It makes those ideas kind of more concise and more easier to understand by using visuals and other things as well.
Interesting.
That's at least my philosophy.
Producer's like the translator for the rest of the team, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I understand. Yeah. So I guess because I heavily rely, I really want to work on the GDD, but I usually think that if but me as a producer shouldn't take away the job of designer,
Yeah.
but if I think you guys bring up a very good point that I should be the kind of the translator.
Yeah.
Translator.
That's, can't find a better word for
It's
it.
important. It's like definitely if you give, but if like giving them that compromise. You know what I mean? You can by all means give the designer like for a good example for the tournament, we have all these whiteboards we do in all our meetings and have all these huge ideas all over the place. But look at it as the ideas. It's a lot of ideas that kind of are on there. How does that all get into the GDD properly and digestible? So when a new team member comes in, how are they going to understand all of this information? Sometimes they only need to understand the programming part, or sometimes they only need to understand the audio, or just like level design. And it's like making sure that if they're on the team, make sure it's like they know what they're working on and they are clear on that. Some people like to have a lot of different little roles, but sometimes some people just like having that singular role. Is that fair to say, Irvine? Because it's that idea that if the designer can organize in a way that everyone is understanding, then you don't have to organize it. But if there are people who don't understand the GDD and can't look at it and say like, I don't understand this, it's hard. There's a lot of people who do GDDs and literally just put a bunch of text dump and don't do the spacing, don't do the like all that stuff to help break it down, as well as like navigating around the outline.
Yeah.
It helps so much with just trying to get around here, because like this can help with visual style, help with controls. A lot of that stuff can be assumed very easily by some people. So a GDD will be like your booklet kind of thing to look back into to say like, okay, what did we agree as a group kind of thing, and look back on that. a GDD should never be kind of done solely by one person.
Mhm.
It should be a collaborative effort by
Mhm.
everyone. All we're doing as producers, though, I feel like, or at least from my experience, is transcribing the ideas of everyone as a group
Mhm.
to put as that one mediator between everyone,
Mhm.
and kind of like saying, okay, so everyone is agreeing on this. I'll put it on the GDD. I want to make sure, and then I say, here is the update GG so far. If there's any objectives, please let me know so I can
Mhm.
change it accordingly.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Totally.
That's great. Okay. But yeah, so it's all about being communicative and having it legible and organized, not just for you and your team. And then yeah, using that Trello and Discord to complementing the doc. As always, communication is key to help clarify things on your GDD. It's important to let your team know via Discord to keep everyone up to date on the project. As your team progresses through the GDD, it's important to update your Trello. That way, as programmers, designers, and writers know what to do at times. And remember, audio and art are handled through through art and audio strike and stuff respectively. But yeah, it does. I think that's it. Questions?
I asked them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
Alright.
But yeah.
Alright, friend. Oh no, we're still going.
there's still more.
There's still
Yeah, I
going,
realized.
There's gonna be a second part.
Next is delegating tasks.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. My second favorite. No, my favorite topic. Even
Yeah.
before design.
Yeah. This is a doozy, my friend. Okay, so assigning tasks is difficult because you have to consider each individual person, you know, because each person is different. You can't just be all like, oh, we have a bunch of programmers, they're all the same skill level, we'll assign everyone the same amount of effort, the same amount of work, the same amount of time. You can't do that because everyone's different.
Yes.
And that's both wonderful because variation keeps things spicy, and we like spice in our lives. But it's also difficult because now we have to try harder as a producer. By the way, shouldn't you be helping Lyndon?
I know, where is the place
Oh,
to go?
Secret Lab, sorry. Secret Lab. I apologize. I sent my friend to do something for me, but I never told him where to do it. I am a horrible producer. Do not appoint me as production director.
More like you made this mistake. At least.
All right. Anyways, yeah. So understand that there's a fine line between being diligent and being bossy. You don't want to be. You definitely want to be someone that your team members respect, because it's through that. It's through that authority that they'll listen to you, they'll respect you, and they'll have faith in the project. That's very important. So here's how we recommend going about delegating tasks. Bye, friend. All right, breaking it down. So first, you look at your team. All right, appreciate how beautiful they are. Okay, every single person is gorgeous. And then you think, okay, what is their skill? How much time do they have? Just have an understanding of what you're working with, basically. It's like if I were to illustrate an image, it's like looking at your tool shed and thinking, okay, all right, what tools do I have to work with, and how do they work, you know? All right, okay. No, I'm trying really hard, okay. Assets, there we go, assets, okay. Yeah, something along those lines. Apparently I'm not very good at illustrating things, but anyways. After you see what your party stats are, okay, your party there we go, party stats, right? You have to establish how much time you have until game over, okay? So it's like Persona, where you see how much time you have until the full moon in Persona 3, right? You need to know, okay, how much time do I have to work with? Okay, exactly. To explore Tartarus, exactly. All right, after you see how much time you have left to explore Tartarus, you determine the complexity of the tasks that need to be done. So like Persona 3, all right, you think to yourself, okay, I have to defeat a shadow by the end of each full moon. You have to make sure you max out Mitsuru's social link because she's the best girl, okay? You need to find out what the important things are, right? And in this case, it's finding out what the gameplay mechanics are, how many there are, how difficult they are, right? And then after you take all these things into consideration, you assign accordingly, adjusting as necessary. Adjusting as necessary is a very important detail because quarter system shoot happens, okay? Like academics, midterms, family, holidays. You have to be flexible, make sure that your schedule isn't bursting at the seams because it's going to fall apart if it is. Right, so just take a step back and look at what you have to work with, okay? That's an important strategy for your Japanese role-playing games, as well as VGDC, right? Anyways, so let's put this into action, first led by me. So our scenario is, so you have a group of 5 teammates, including yourself. 3 are programmers, 1 is a designer, and you are a producer. You are interested in making a 2D platformer about an anteater trying to find an anthill. You want to implement 3 levels, 3 different enemy types, and various simple player mechanics. Okay. So that is step number 3, where you look at what mechanics you want. And then, as well as step number 1, where you see what your party's stats are, right? Is that everything? Time remaining. Well, yeah, the quarter, that's a control. And then your task are as follows. Submitting a request to ArtStrike team for the various sprite sheets needed in the game, design 3 separate levels, create scripts for 3 enemy AI, and create script for player controls and their world interactions. So what do we do first? Firstly, evaluate whether or not specific teammates want to learn a new skill or continue to hone in on skill they already know. I need to check the English on this, but yeah, so zooming in on your party members' stats, you realize, hey, I have a programmer that wants to do audio. Hey, I have 2 other programmers. They'd like to work on player abilities, and hey, you have a designer. And that fits perfectly because you have your mechanics before. You need to design the maps. That'll of course go to your designer. And then you can allocate the mechanics, gameplay mechanics, to the programmers as needed. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. So yeah, by communicating with your teammates, you understand who to give each mechanic to, and making sure you both get everything you need completed and make each individual team member happy. Because if they're working on something that they enjoy or want to learn, then their progress will be muy bueno, right? Because if you're not working on something that you like, then you're not going to enjoy working, and your progress is going to be not muy bueno. And so deadlines. You have to remember that all students are different. And when you ask them, hey, how long will it take for you to complete this? If they give you a set time, you're like, all right, make sure you get it done. But then once you turn around on your little producer scheduling notebook, you're gonna double the amount of time or multiply it by 1.5 because you want to accommodate for the little hiccups that happen along the course of the quarter. So remember to assign lighter scripts and more time to beginner programmers, and the more difficult mechanics to the programmers, the more skilled programmers. And if you don't know what's more difficult programming-wise, definitely ask an officer. That's what I did because I'm not a programmer, and I relied heavily on programmers to help me schedule my stuff. Yeah, it's a very useful resource. Remember that roles can change. Nothing is set in stone. Even if someone is a producer, they can also be a writer. That's what I did. Even though someone is a programmer, they can also be a producer. That's what that guy is doing. And just be flexible and go with the flow and have a good time. Make sure everyone's having a good time. Because it's nice to have a good time. So, mechanics planning. Hi, that's you, right?
I'm after that, but I could take over for that.
Oh, this is my slide. Go away.
Yeah.
Anyways, mechanics planning. Say you're making a 2D platformer. What are all the mechanics for a game like this? All right, guys. Things to consider. Number one, let's work on this together.
Oh,
Are you joining our workshop, friend?
Oh yes, the
What's it?
consulting job experience. So yeah.
Okay. What's your name, friend?
Kevin.
Kevin. Alrighty, we have Kevin and Alana. We got this, y'all. So, what mechanics do players need in a 2D
a ground
platformer?
check so that you could go from jumping to standing.
Sorry?
A ground check.
Ground check? Yeah, that's correct. We have a ground check. Any other mechanics that you guys can think of? 2D platformer? Think Mario.
Just player movement. in
Player
general.
movement, that is correct.
And
A health.
Health, that is true. Health.
A
There we go.
momentum.
Sorry?
A momentum.
Momentum. Oh, that's true, that's true.
Player controller.
like maybe like say collectibles, things like coins.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, collectibles.
And well, certainly there's enemy AI.
AI.
There's like pause menu, like option menus. Because you have to exit the game.
Don't forget jumping. There's jumping. You can potentially do climbing. You could potentially do pushing. A lot of these are like accessory mechanics that are not completely necessary, but it makes for a good Mario game, right? So yeah, there are a lot of mechanics for just a simple 2D platformer. Like, just for the bare bones, you need ground, you need walking. I'm pretty sure you'll need at least jumping for a platformer.
Yeah.
I saw that's included in player movement.
Yeah. But yeah, that's 2D platformer for mechanics. Now, what mechanics do the enemies need?
Oh, they need a deduction radius.
Deduction.
Well, they need path planning maybe.
Path planning, that is correct.
So
I think that's it. Is that it?
Yeah, but
So
they
it's like-
respawn them out.
well, you have to.
That's true.
That would be
Respond.
killable. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they have AI,
Which
they have
one?
health.
Yeah.
Maybe they drop like rewards or anything for killing them, things like that.
Lots of things. All right.
Oh, they have to deal damage. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Reduction, damage, health reduction. Now, what mechanics does the world need? You know, we kind of got ground.
There's collision,
Collision, exactly.
gravity, if that's the same.
Yeah. So, see, breaking things into sections, your game, like, it's more than just, oh, what does the player do, right? It's also, you have to think about enemies and also the world. You have to anticipate needs for a functional game because it's more than just what you can do with a controller, right? It's more than you'd expect, and thus you need to make sure that, at least for beginner team leads, that you water things down to the bare bones because all the mechanics really add up.
Have you met with your team yet?
Yeah.
And so have you guys already started talking about design and the sort of mechanics that you guys are going to include?
We have ideas. We have the design like ready, like and how this gonna work, like mock-ups and stuff.
Yeah.
We talk about we pretty on the same page on all these things, but we have trouble we yet haven't sit down and brainstorm how to divide all the mechanics into like classes and functions and tasks for the programmers to work
Right.
on. So I was
And I think
planning on
that's-
host such a meeting. But
Yeah, I think that's something like the programmers could have like even like on their own, like they can talk about the game architecture
yeah.
and stuff. Like exactly how does that translate into scripts, exactly.
Yeah.
But as long as you have all these mechanics like figured out, like what exactly
makes up this game, then then you'll have a good understanding as the scope of your project and how to go about assigning tasks that way.
Yeah, are you part of a game team, Kevin?
No.
No? Okay then. That's the come.
Okay.
Irby.
Right. Now we're going to give you a scenario, right? So, basically, we're gonna have you look at this team, and then you're gonna say, okay, what's up with it, and what can we do to fix it, right? So, your team is making a puzzle side-scroller game, right? And so your team composition, your party members are looking like there's 3 new programmers who have like a bare bone understanding of Unity and source control. You have 1 new writer who's interested in developing the story for the game. You have 1 new designer who's interested in game design and learning about that, but does have some programming experience, probably more than the 3 who are completely new to it. And then you have you as a producer. Yeah, right. And so it is week 6. Presentation week is on week 10. So you have basically 4 weeks left to figure out how are you going to get this done. And so as of right now, you have the UI done and the walking done. It's pretty vague, but the point is that it's not a lot, and there's still a bunch of remaining tasks that need to be done. Programming, essentially all of the player controller stuff needs to be implemented. The climbing, the picking, the pushing, pulling, being able to pick up items, or there's also the mechanics that you guys had originally planned for like item interaction, inventory, cutscenes, as well as the writer who's still working on writing out the dialogue, and design who's still working on a stage, right? And so what are some immediate things that feel like wrong, like as of right now? Like what are your concerns for this project?
Scope. Like
Yes.
like we as one immediate fix would be cutting out some of the bigger tasks that or like after grouping the tasks together into smaller chunks, when some of the bigger tasks that barely could be touched on, it could be cut out. And also I have doubts in the team motivation, so might be have to work on them individually.
Right. So, like you said, the scope, there's just way too many things that need to be done with 4 weeks and not the sort of experience level that the team is capable of doing all these things within that short amount of time. So definitely cutting down on some of these tasks, the things that you don't need to have, is significant. And so like what are some things you would pull the plug on
Oh, you
for
don't
yeah
need
for this?
for the demo? I don't think you need climb for the demo.
For the climbing, yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah,
could
you
have,
wouldn't
like
yeah.
1 item,
Mhm.
just 2 items.
Sorry, what was that?
You could have 2 items instead of the intended, like, I don't know, 5.
Yeah, exactly. So rather than having a whole inventory system, you can just have it so that they can only hold like 1 item, grab onto 1 or 2 items. Exactly. And it completely removes that out. Do you need cutscenes?
May not be cutscene,
Yeah,
but
just
like
no
text box on the bottom. That's
Yeah, it could
way
just be
easier.
like a dialogue box.
Like subtitles. That's what we didn't ask for.
Oh, but yeah, just be wary that
The writer
you probably want the writer to
to do something.
yeah, you'd want the writer to be able to have like their input like within the project, so it does. You wouldn't cut it out like you wouldn't cut out like the dialogue that's all planned out, but maybe you can leave the writing in like the level in the form of like text boxes or stuff that maybe if the player clicks a button, then it'll spawn it, and then you can easily remove it. Something simple to script, but still allows them to shine like with the writing. And then design 1 stage that should be like the bare minimum, So yeah, so that was a good solution, just sort of organizing the tasks as to like what needs to be done, what needs to be defining all the necessary stuff as opposed to the ones that would be nice to have, such as like the cutscenes or like a full inventory system, things like that. You know, and so things that you could do as a production, as a producer, like, right, you're not just limited to just delegating tasks and just making sure things are organized. You can actively jump into the development process within this this sort of setting. The setting of the VGDC projects. Maybe you can help design the level 2, help the designer make sure that like we have one level complete, because as we noted before, like it mentioned that the designer had some programming experience, so he can probably help along with some of those programming tasks and make sure those are done like by the end of the quarter. And you want to make sure that the world interactions that you plan out, those are like as simple as possible. So like instead of just having like this whole like puzzle sort of system, maybe it can be just like buttons or like levers or things like that. Things that are just, you want to make it really simple, just more simple enough to fit the scope of your project. And so how would you organize these programming tasks by like importance if you were to move things around like this? With the most important being up top, things you would probably do first, and then probably the things you would like cut out
Item
at like the bottom.
interaction
Yeah.
and pick up on the second.
Mhm.
I mean, for grouping
For a
them,
puzzle,
right? Like,
puzzle side scroller, right?
yeah, for grouping them, you have to item interaction and pick up item as a same group, so they
Yeah.
can go together. And the
Yeah.
inventory, they're eventually same group.
Mhm.
The climbing, pushing, and pulling is another group,
Mhm.
and cutscene is a third group.
Yeah.
And so in the same group, item interaction needs to be done first,
Mhm.
and maybe choose one of the mechanics that the programmer really like, put it on the top.
Right.
From climbing, pushing, and pulling, and cutscene is just you have to do like at least text box. Give that to one of them.
Yeah, because making a fully functional like cutscene kind of system is a lot, especially for like a newbie, Yeah. Okay. So essentially, like tips on. So this is just sort of going over the sort of things that you were talking about, and what the things that you should be thinking about when you're thinking of choosing which tasks are more important, as opposed to make sure that those get done before all the others. And like you said, focus on the core things in your game. The most basic things that need to be done in order for your game to be functional and for your game to be like what you set it out to be. If it's a platformer, then obviously there needs to be the most core thing you could have is a player controller that is capable of moving around like the world in like an interesting way of jumping or things like that. When you are writing out these tasks, for example, like on your Trello or maybe on like your game design document, once you have these all figured out, it's best to be as straightforward, as detailed as possible, because maybe not to the extent of like, you got to make sure you have this amount of scripts in order for like this system, make sure you have these variables and these kind of functions. Not that. You just want to make sure, okay, like what is the exact interaction within the game. So for example, instead of just saying, your task would be picking up items, you would say, instead, you need to make sure that items that they can be dropped, they can disappear, or they can be moved around by like the player, things like that, or to use, so making sure you state direct actions, direct tasks will make the jobs of like the programmers or like whoever's working on something like much easier because they know exactly what they need to get, like what exactly needs to be done and like how, you know. And so when you're delegating tasks, like was mentioned before, you want to make sure that you guys are meeting up sufficient amount of time. So because I like to think of it, even if it's just for like maybe an hour, like a week or like two, because you know, a short amount of time working on the project as a team is better than no time at all. So try to find the times in which all, if not most of your team can meet up. You know, sometimes it's unfortunate that not everyone can meet up, like every single person can meet up, but if it comes down to it, then you just gotta settle for the time in which most of them can, and then try to catch up the person who can't make it. So ideally, like I said, you want to aim for like at least 2 hours. 2 hours of time of you knowing that the entire group is working on this project like a week. Obviously, you might want to do more or should do more, but like I said, 2 hours is better than 0 hours like a week, you know. And if you find that you're running out of time, then it's like week 9 and it's like shoot, we don't have everything that like we have, then you know, adjust your scope accordingly, and you should know how to do that. So here's some last tip about being better at delegating tasks, and that all comes down to your understanding of the production pipeline. And by the production pipeline, I mean your understanding of how these things are getting done. So understanding how, like, you know, how difficult, if you understand how difficult it is to program something, or how long it takes for a certain art, like a 3D model to be made, textured, animated, things like that, then you can make a more informed decision as to saying, okay, like, you know, this thing will take that long, or like he tells me it will take this long, and I understand that, like, it's reasonable, you know. And so the best way to go about, like, you know, becoming more informed is just to be constantly like learning about all these things, you know. If it means going to other workshops, like the art workshops or the programming ones, or if it means like going on YouTube tutorials and like seeing how like different aspects of like production, like the design and stuff, looking at design videos or things like that. Or you can, it's something even as simple as just asking your teammates to just sit in and see how they or like how like they work. And I feel like that would be a more intimate, like better understanding of your team, like of your current team, because you understand how they work, and so you understand their pipeline, and so then you can make better decisions in the future. And but yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Do you have any questions regarding delegating tasks and stuff?
My mind is empty.
So is my soul on
Everything. I am but a husk with a human being. All right. Thanks, guys. That's the end of the workshop.
it.
Bye, gamers.